Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And today, we're previewing the greatest spectacle in racing, the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500 here on Running Hot. So we'll start with a bit of a season recap on the 2025 IndyCar season so far, so you can kind of get an idea of what's been happening, who's been good. Then we'll talk about handicapping the Indianapolis 500. We're going to talk about the crazy month of May that has happened in the IndyCar series. A lot of controversy going on. And of course, we'll dive into our bets at the end. So let's start with this 2025 IndyCar season. So far, we have had 5 races. They have all come at road and street courses. So that's tracks where you're turning both left and right. Well, at the Indy 500, it's the first oval race of the year. There's only going to be left turns. So it's not going to have a whole lot of carryover from the road and street courses into the Indianapolis 500 with the oval because it is a different discipline of racing, a different style of racing. That said, the good drivers and the good teams should still rise to the top here at Indy. So who has been good this year? Well, we have to start at the top with Alex Palou, the defending series champion, the 2-time defending series champion, and the winner of 4 of the first 5 races so far in the 2025 IndyCar season. He leads the point standings by far over number 2 in the points, and that is my driver. I'm a big fan, Kyle Kirkwood. Kyle Kirkwood, the only other winner so far in the 2025 IndyCar Series season, taking a win, his second win on the streets of Long Beach and his 3rd career win overall. So that is kind of where we stand as far as race winners, but we have a lot of other good drivers here as well. Pato O'Ward, Christian Lundgaard for McLaren have been very strong this year, coming in both in the top 5 in the points and with multiple podium finishes for each driver. And then, of course, you always have to worry about the Team Penske trio of Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin, and Will Power. And we can't forget 6-time IndyCar champion Scott Dixon, who will always be a threat anywhere he goes, but especially here at Indy. So those are the big names. Those are the big drivers. But there's going to be a whole lot more that we're going to dive into for this Indy 500 as well. But that's kind of a brief recap of the season so far. Very brief recap. But let's talk about handicapping the Indy 500 race because this is a bit of a different beast. It's certainly different than if you're a regular listener of the NASCAR podcasts for Running Hot here at Action Network. We don't get as much data for IndyCar racing. We don't get the lap-by-lap practice data. I'm not able to do my practice flags metric. We don't have things like driver ratings, etc. So it's a lot of box score browsing, and it's a lot of watching practice. And that's because in the month of May for the Indy 500, because it is such a special race, we get more practice for the Indy 500 than in any race, in any series, even more than in any NASCAR race as well. So there was practice all last week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? Practice every day. And then they qualified on Saturday and they qualified again on Sunday to set the field. So the best way to handicap the Indy 500 is to watch every practice session. It's not necessarily to look at the leaderboard times because those leaderboard times in the practice sessions can be misleading because of the draft at the Indianapolis 500. We often talk about the draft at like Talladega or Daytona on the NASCAR side of things. Well, on the IndyCar side of things, the draft, while it doesn't, create a huge pack of cars, it is very important at the Indy 500 to maintain and get speed because the car in front of you will blow a huge hole through the air and you'll get to suck right up to it and hopefully pass it. And that can lead to artificial times on the leaderboard for the practice sessions. So it's really an art handicapping the Indy 500. You got to watch the practice sessions. You got to listen to what teams and drivers are saying, and you kind of just have to study. And so I have watched every single practice session. There was another practice session post-qualifying practice session on Monday. I watched all of that, and I've been able to find what I think are 4 very good bets for the Indy 500. So you definitely want to take into account track history as well when you're handicapping the Indy 500. You know, a guy like Santino Ferrucci, we know he is always going to be strong at the Indy 500, even though, you know, he tends to run around mid-pack on the road and street courses. It is just the style of racing that suits him very well here at Indy. So, you know, a guy like Santino Ferrucci is always going to be good. So you certainly want to look at track history as well, and oval tracks in general when looking at the Indy 500. So let's talk about this crazy month of May. I talked about the fact that, you know, we had practice last week and we had qualifying over the weekend. Well, on Friday, IndyCar turns up the boost in these cars. So we call it Fast Friday. The speeds increase because they essentially give these cars more horsepower, and that carries through to Saturday and Sunday. And on Friday, we started seeing drivers crashing. We saw Marcus Armstrong crash on Friday. We saw Giffen Simpson have a crash where he got airborne, fortunately landing back on all four wheels. So he had a crash and had to go to a backup car. And then Marcus Armstrong's was on Saturday. And then also on Saturday, Colton Herta crashed as well in the morning practice session, getting upside down and actually flipping, landing on his side and riding the wall. So very scary crash for Colton Herta, but he was totally fine. All drivers walked away unscathed as far as injuries. And on Sunday, Scott McLaughlin crashed as well. One of the race favorites crashed, had to go to a backup car as well. So those four drivers, ever since the boost was turned up, all had accidents either in practice it was all during practice for qualifying. Then we have qualifying, and the way qualifying is there's a Saturday qualifying, and 1 through 12 advance to the next round, and then they requalify. 13 through 30, those drivers are set in their starting spots, and then 31 through 34, those are 4 spots there, but only 3 drivers make it into the field. So 31 through 34 will also requalify on Sunday. So 1 through 12 requalifies for those spots, and 31 through 34 requalifies for those spots. Well, on Sunday, during the Fast 12 qualifying, we hear news that Team Penske has pulled 2 of their drivers, Will Power and 2-time defending Indy 500 champion Joseph Newgarden, from the qualifying line. And it turns out they had a technical infraction with a modification to the rear attenuator, which is a safety part that you cannot modify. All safety parts are not allowed to be modified, and they had it modified. So they were not allowed to qualify in the Fast 12 and were given starting spots 11 and 12. Scott McLaughlin, from crashing his car earlier in practice that day, didn't have a car ready to go to qualify, so he starts 10th. And then we set the qualifying order from there. The fastest 6 will do 1 more qualifying session, and it turns out rookie, first-time oval driver ever, brand new team, Prema Racing, Robert Schwartzman, won the pole for the Indy 500 in one of the most spectacular moments you will ever see in the history of the Indianapolis 500. And there have been 109. There will be 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. And this is one of the biggest moments of all time in the month of May, with a rookie driver, a rookie team in his first oval race ever winning the pole position. So that was very cool. On the flip side of things, unfortunately, Jacob Abel was bounced from the field and will not make the 33-car field. He was 34th fastest, so he does not get to start the Indy 500. And then the fallout from the Team Penske modifications to the rear attenuator, they got moved to the back of the field after that. So they will start, Joseph Newgarden will start 32nd, Will Power will start 33rd. Scott McLaughlin will still start 10th. His rear attenuator was not modified, so he's okay. But those two-time defending champion Joseph Newgarden will start 32nd. Another race favorite, Will Power, will start 33rd. And that's huge news because winning from the back has proven to be very difficult. It's been since the 30s that only one driver has won from a starting spot outside the top 28. So it is very difficult to win. But again, those tend to be the slower qualifiers back there. We have 2 of the fastest cars in the field starting 32nd and 33rd. So it's going to be exciting to watch those two drivers come forward. Also, Team Penske announced the firing of their top 3 men in IndyCar: Tim Cindric, Ron Rzuski, and Kyle Moyer. Those were the strategists for each of the 3 Team Penske drivers as well. So a lot of personnel changes. We'll have to see how that affects Team Penske for the Indy 500. But it is time to get into the bets. 4 corners here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So we're going to do 4 turns. I'll give a pick for each turn, and we'll wrap it up there. So we're going to throw the green flag on the 109th running of the Indy 500 and fire off for turn 1. Okay, first turn here, and I'm going right to one of the race favorites, and I'm going to take Pato O'Ward here, and I'll get to what market in just a second, but Pato O'Ward, if you look across various books, 5-1, 4.5-1 is the race winner. There's maybe a 6-1 out there. Well, that's great, but why don't we just take Pato O'Ward to finish as the top Chevy driver at 4-1? Because he's being hung in some spots at 4.5-1 to beat the whole 33 car field. But if we can cut that field in half and he just has to beat about half the field and finish as top Chevy, and we can get that at 4-1 at Hard Rock, I think that's a great bet. Pato O'Ward is the race favorite, and he rightly should be the race favorite. But let's, instead of taking him to win, just take him to beat the Chevys. And if we look at Pato O'Ward's record here, it's a stellar driving record at the Indy 500. In 2019, he was with a brand new team, a small market team, Carlin Racing, and didn't qualify, so we won't count that. But ever since he moved to his current team, Arrow McLaren, his finishes have been 6th, 4th, 2nd, and a 24th place finish where he crashed while he was trying to get 2nd place as well. So Pato O'Ward has been on the cusp of winning this race multiple times. And in fact, last year, Joseph Newgarden passed him going into turn 3 on the very last lap. Yes, Pato O'Ward was the leader with 1 lap to go, but Joseph Newgarden passed him with 2 corners to go, barely beating Pato O'Ward. Well, Joseph Newgarden starts 32nd now. So that is going to be a tall order for him to get to the front of the field and threaten Pato O'Ward. So yes, Pato O'Ward is my race favorite, but instead of taking him 4 or 5 or even 6-1 to beat the whole field, let's take him at 4-1 at Hard Rock to finish as the top Chevy driver. So turn 1, Pato O'Ward, top Chevy, 4-1 at Hard Rock. So that's the first turn. We're going to go through the short chute and roll through turn 2. And in turn 2, I am going to talk about one of these drivers here on Team Penske, and that's Scott McLaughlin. And I'm going to talk about another driver. So if you have the app Grid Rival, that is a nice, kind of betting opportunity where instead of betting on outrights or top threes, we're essentially parlaying prop bets. And in this case, we're parlaying over under finishing position. So I'm going to look at Scott McLaughlin and I'm going to take his over 5.5 or finish worse than 5.5 finishing position. And a lot of the reason is that practice crash that he had. He had to go to a backup car. And on Monday practice, he was running the backup car. And while he said it felt good, it felt comfortable, I was watching him in practice and he just didn't quite seem to have the speed, especially on older tires, to pull up to drivers in front of him and pass them. And in fact, the driver I'm going to parlay him with, David Malukas, was actually on similar age tires to Scott McLaughlin in practice and was able to pull away from him. So I'm going to take Scott McLaughlin over 5.5 finishing position, and I'm going to take David Malukas under 11.5 finishing position over at Grid Rival. Parlay those two, and you'll return 3 times your entry. And let's talk about David Malukas because he is an interesting driver. David Malukas is a 4th year IndyCar driver technically, but he only raced half the schedule last year. He had a hand injury that prevented him from running for his team, McLaren, Arrow McLaren, and they released him. And David Malukas ended up signing with Meyershank Racing last year. Well, now David Malukas concluded that year and is now racing for AJ Foyt Racing. And AJ Foyt Racing has had some success here recently with Malukas' teammate Santino Ferrucci, and also, for the past 2 years, even Stingray Robb, who was in the Foyt car last year, looked very good. And that's because AJ Foyt Racing for the past 2 years, not this year, but the past 2 years, had Michael Cannon as their lead engineer, and he found the special sauce to make these cars go fast at Indianapolis specifically. So David Malukas has a car that can go fast, and he ended up qualifying 7th, so he's already starting ahead of Scott McLaughlin. And David Malukas, his best finishes in his career have come on ovals. When he was running for the small team, Dale Coyne Racing, he finished 2nd, and he finished 3rd at Gateway. He had a 4th place finish at Texas, another oval, high-speed oval there. So the best track type for David Malukas is these ovals. Now he's on a team that still has those secrets, even though Michael Cannon is no longer with AJ Foyt Racing, has the secrets from when Michael Cannon was there. So they are able to go fast, and we saw it through David Malukas's qualifying. And David Malukas looked really good in practice. I mentioned he was pulling away from Scott McLaughlin on similarly aged tires. So I like David Malukas to finish better than 11.5, Scott McLaughlin to finish worse than 5.5. And hey, Scott McLaughlin has never finished better than 6th at the Indy 500. So he's already, gone over 5.5 every single time he has raced this race. So that is going to be the parlay here at Grid Rival to return 3 times your entry. That is my turn to pick. So we're halfway through the picks here. We're going to go down the nearly 5/8 of a mile long backstretch and then fire off into turn 3. Okay, third turn here. We're getting a little bit longer on the odds, and I'm going to go with Andretti Global as the winning team. I think this is a really good price at 9-1 over at Caesars. So you can get Andretti Global as the winning team. They are a 4-car team for the Indianapolis 500. In addition to their 3 normal entries, Kyle Kirkwood, Colton Herta, Marcus Ericsson, they add a 4th car for the Indy 500, and that is Marco Andretti. Yes, the namesake of Andretti Global, the grandson of the great Mario Andretti, the son of the great Michael Andretti. Marco Andretti is the 4th car here. But really, we're mostly focusing on the 3 main drivers, Kyle Kirkwood, Colton Herta, and Marcus Ericsson, because those are the 3 most likely to win this race. And let's start with Colton Herta, because last year, Colton Herta had the best car. Yes, Joseph Newgarden won the race, but Colton Herta absolutely had the best race car. Unfortunately, Colton Herta crashed during the race, but he drove from mid-pack starting spot all the way to the front of the field, and it looked like he was doing it so easily. So the defending race winner, Colton Herta, remember, he had a crash as well, so he will be in a backup car, but he looked pretty good in practice. He was pretty happy with his car in practice on Monday. So I think, Andretti Global has been able to capture what Colton Herta had last year and replicate that this year in race trim. Yes, they did kind of qualify poorly. Colton Herta in a backup car. Kyle Kirkwood kind of went out in the heat of the day. But Marcus Ericsson put that car in the fast 12, and he will be starting from the 9th position. Marcus Ericsson won this race in 2022 with Chip Ganassi Racing, but he was very, very happy with his race car. He tweeted he thinks he has a race-winning car. He interviewed that way. And then let's get to Kyle Kirkwood, my favorite driver. Kyle Kirkwood, all the first week of practice, felt like he had one of the cars to beat. It didn't translate to qualifying. Like I mentioned, he also went out in the heat of the day. He never really got to make a qualifying run in the cooler temperatures, which would have helped increase his speed. But I think he has a very strong race car. He mentioned in an interview that, Joseph Newgarden should be paying attention to the Andretti guys as well, and especially him and Colton Herta. And of course, now Marcus Ericsson being the furthest starting forward of the Andretti cars. So I think you have 3 very capable race winners we're getting kind of a nice discount on them because they did qualify kind of poorly, especially Colton Herta and Kyle Kirkwood, and Colton had the crash. So we're getting a nice discount. Let's bundle the Andretti guys together and take Andretti Global to win at 9-1 odds over at Caesars Sportsbook. So that leaves 1 turn to go, and that's turn 4. All right, final turn here. I'm going to go to a guy we already talked about, David Malukas. I love him for this race. I'm going to take him 25-1 to win this race. You can get that at ESPN Bet. If you're in a state that has Circa Sportsbook, you can get that there as well at that price. Also going to take him top 3 finish at 6-1, and that's pretty widely available. I believe 6-1 is the longest odds I have seen on him, and I've seen it at multiple sports books. Again, this is just a spot where I think David Malukas looks really good in practice, looked great in Monday practice, seems very happy with his race car, the balance of his car, the speed of his car, looked really good on old tires in practice on Monday practice, which again is the post-qualifying practice. So we're really focusing on race setup. And David Malukas, very strong at the ovals, like I mentioned, 3 top 5 finishes on the ovals in his career. And, the IndyCar series is really a road and street course dominant heavy series. So there aren't as many ovals that we run, but David Malukas's best results have come on the ovals. He's got that Foyt setup now. Foyt is, of course, AJ Foyt is aligned with Team Penske. So they have a technical alliance with the team that's won the past 2 Indy 500s with Joseph Newgarden. So I think this is a spot where we want to absolutely try to bet on David Malukas. He's got some massive upside here, I think, this weekend for the Indy 500. So 25-1 to win the race, 3-1 to finish, 6-1 to finish in the top 3. Those are my bets on David Malukas here in turn 4. And while we don't have a victory lane pick, I am just going to give a pick to win. And again, this is not a bet. It's just my pick to win, who I think is going to win the race. And I do think it will be Pato O'Ward. I think starting on the front row in the 3rd position, having finished 2nd in 2 of the last 3 years and crashed while going for, a top 3 spot or something like that in 2023. He's right there. And now all of a sudden his biggest competition, Joseph Newgarden, starting at the back of the field. There's definitely going to be some strong drivers he will have to beat, namely Takuma Sato, who starts right alongside of him in 2nd place. Of course, Alex Palou, we mentioned him starting in the 2nd row alongside his teammate, Scott Dixon, also in the 2nd row. There are going to be threats. I think Felix Rosenquist is going to be strong. I think David Malukas is going to be strong. The Andretti Global cars should come forward. And of course, the Team Penske cars will always be strong as well. So it is a wide open Indy 500. It is going to be exciting. But in the end, I think Pato O'Ward gets that elusive Indianapolis 500 victory. So that is going to do it for the Indianapolis 500 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. If you'd like to tail some of the bets, look for any quick slip links in the podcast and video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. And make sure to check out the Coca-Cola 600 episode of Running Hot as well if you didn't get to catch that with myself and my co-host, Stevie Young, Stevie TPFL of Roto-Grinders. That was a great episode there as well. And for you NASCAR listeners, we'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.